Hello, everyone. Today we're talking about Persian history from Persia to Iran and what's going on now. However, on the Piers Morgan Uncensored channel, there's a new channel next to it called History Uncensored with Bianca Nao, and she's just done an extremely good, high-quality breakdown of Persian history to Iranian history over the last 5,000 years, helping to show us how we got to today with the conflict in the Middle East in 2026, March 2026. However, there are two bits that need to be fixed, in my opinion. Firstly, her treatment of Alexander the Great, which she does mention, and then Winston Churchill and Mr. D'Arcy, not the Jane Austen Mr. D'Arcy, but another Mr. D'Arcy, who was very rich and very significant in his own right, who helped create the current conditions for today's conflict in the Middle East. Now, Alexander the Great, of course, was the son of Philip of Macedon, and he basically conquered most of the ancient world and bits of the non-ancient world as well, because he went into India and even Pakistan and even Afghanistan. He was extraordinarily successful as a warrior. Alexander the Great's the most successful warrior in history, without any doubt. Augustus had Alexander's picture on his ring, signet ring, when he was a young man, and if you had Augustus Caesar as a fanboy, then you're doing pretty well. Now, Alexander was reviled in Persia. He burnt Persepolis in Persia, and he was known as Sikander. I think they still talk about him today as a kind of a boogeyman to scare the children. And Alexander's actually mentioned in the Koran as well as Dulkane, meaning the two-horned one, I'm pretty sure, if my memory serves correctly. Now, Alexander didn't just affect the Persians or the Indians or the Afghanis or the Egyptians or that group. He also affected the Jewish community and the Hellenization, so the Greek culturification, as it were, of the world because of Alexander the Great's conquests, led to the Jewish community using rabbis, rabbinical schools, basically because of the Greek influence, the didactic tradition of the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, the pedagogues who would teach you. So teacher-led training, very much the Greek tradition, introduced through the influence of Alexander the Great and his military successes, and the fact that Alexander himself had been taught by the great Aristotle, and he was very keen that Greek culture be extended and introduced wherever it could be. So Bianca Nao talks about Alexander, but doesn't cover off on those parts. And he made so much money that he went to Britain and he got Winston Churchill in the early 1900s to help him get into Persia to look for oil and exploit the oil there, which made Winston and William Knox D'Arcy very happy. But then the Anglo-Persian Oil Company made it rich. But then, of course, the locals became annoyed in terms of, understandably, an unfair split of oil income and royalties. And that led to Persian nationalism, and ultimately, after the Second World War, the Iranians wanting a new carve-up of oil funding, which Mohammed Mossadegh championed, but then MI6 and CIA chucked him out in 1953. And unfortunately, resource arguments have categorized what's gone ever since, although in 1979, obviously a new regime came in with a religious view. History Uncensored really does cover all of that very well. All I'd say is you need to understand the full effect of Alexander the Great, and you need to understand the effect of Winston Churchill and William Knox D'Arcy from Australia, because Winston and William Knox D'Arcy had a massive effect, and you can't just sort of put that down as Western interests, the Allies' interests, geopolitics, so on and so forth, right? It actually does come from an obscure gold mine in Queensland, Australia. Most people are saying that's because of central bank purchases of gold ever since Russia had its 300 billion frozen, and therefore people are concerned that the US government might start rapping central bankers over the knuckles with a metal ruler and not letting them take their money back. So people are plowing money into gold. The gold market's worth over 35 trillion US dollars. That's a lot of money. So gold looks very, very strong. And while the oil price has gone up and people are talking about oil concerns for the economy, the reality is oil as a percentage of the economy is much smaller. There's a vibrant discussion about electrification, electric cars, electric everything these days, and a higher oil price will simply surge that forward a very long way. So I don't see the Middle Eastern conflict causing too much difficulty, although it will be painful and costly. But it's not as if there isn't a new way that has been pushed in terms of decarbonization, electrification, and all of those issues that we've been talking about for a very long time now, and that has now materialized into a modern trillion-dollar EV economy and electrification economy. Artificial intelligence, AI, that is still coming along. The head of Nvidia has just spoken about $1 trillion of runway in the next couple of years. So Nvidia is moving along quite nicely and taking the hyperscalers. The reality is people will not be using AI to replace Salesforce and other software companies anytime soon. I think they will be using AI on top of to augment their software purchases, not to replace their software purchases. So you've seen software prices come down in this trade called the SaaS apocalypse, the apocalypse of software as a service. But ultimately, AI has barely been taken up. Software needs to be taken up more. So I don't think it's an either or, and it's questionable as to whether share prices should have fallen so much, unless, of course, you correctly believe that share prices of software may have run too hard anyway in the first place. So that's a bit of a update for you for 2026 and a recommendation, Bianca Nao History Uncensored, right next to Piers Morgan's Uncensored podcast, which is in itself very good. Very good.